Wow. Okay, talk about a bolt from the blue, right?
Absolutely.
We just got word. India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire. This is after 4 days of, well, really intense attacks and counterattacks. And the kicker, the announcement didn't actually come from Delhi or Islamabad.
No.
It landed on Truth Social from U.S. President Donald Trump.
Yeah, that part's definitely raising some eyebrows. I mean, especially given how fast things escalated and how severe it got.
Right. So maybe let's just quickly recap what led up to this.
Good idea. So what we've seen over the last few days is this really dangerous spike in tension all along the border and, of course, in divided Kashmir.
Yeah.
We had reports of airstrikes, going into Pakistani territory, then swift counterattacks hitting Indian air bases, and crucially, a really worrying number of civilians caught right in the middle, people forced to flee their homes.
And this all seemed to ignite after that really brutal attack last month, didn't it?
It did. That seems to be the spark. 26 tourists killed in Indian-administered Kashmir, most of them Hindu men, according to the reports.
And India's reaction was immediate. They pointed the finger straight at Lashkar-e-Taiba.
Which we should probably mention is a UN-designated terrorist group. India maintains it operates out of Pakistan.
Exactly. But Pakistan, they flat out denied any involvement. They even suggested an independent investigation.
Right. So you've got this denial hitting the accusation head on, and, well, then things really ramped up.
They did.
Yeah.
Because despite that denial, this past Wednesday, India launched airstrikes.
Yeah, claiming they were hitting militant sites inside Pakistan, which is, that's a huge step, right? Crossing an internationally recognized border with military force.
Absolutely. A response was pretty much inevitable after that.
And it came fast. Saturday, Pakistan reportedly hit back, targeting 3 Indian air bases.
And from there, it just spiraled.
Completely. We're hearing about jet fighters, missile strikes were alleged, drones were a big factor, apparently, and just heavy artillery fire back and forth.
The result being, tragically, quite significant loss of life. Reports are suggesting at least 60 people killed.
That's the figure we're seeing, yes. And tens of thousands of civilians displaced. It's just a stark reminder, isn't it? The human cost when these things erupt.
It really is, which, makes President Trump's sudden announcement on Truth Social feel even more, well, unexpected.
Definitely. For him to post about congratulating both sides on using common sense, given the gravity of the situation, it almost feels like an understatement.
A little bit, yeah. But what's interesting maybe is the U.S. role here. Announcing it like that, it suggests quite a bit of diplomacy was happening behind the scenes, doesn't it? Stuff we weren't seeing.
It certainly does. A significant push, it seems.
Because almost right after Trump's post, the official confirmations started rolling in.
Yep. India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, announced that all firing and military action would stop. The deadline was 5:00 p.m. GMT.
And then Pakistan's Foreign Minister, Ishaq Dar, he followed up on X, confirming the immediate ceasefire.
And he added that line about Pakistan always striving for peace, but without compromising sovereignty. Standard diplomatic language, but confirmation nonetheless.
So, okay, ceasefire announced, confirmed by both sides.
Yeah.
You'd think maybe a moment to sort of breathe a sigh of relief.
You would think, but, well, here's where things take another twist, almost immediately, highlighting just how fragile this all is. Within hours of that ceasefire announcement, we get a report citing an Indian government source claiming Pakistan had already broken it.
Hours? Wow.
Yeah, and adding to that, AFP reporters in Srinagar, that's an Indian-administered Kashmir, they reported hearing multiple loud explosions.
Okay, so that immediately throws things into question. Was it already falling apart?
Exactly, and it wasn't just an unnamed source either. The chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah, he actually posted on X himself.
What did he say?
Basically questioning the ceasefire after hearing those same explosions in Srinagar. It really casts doubt on the stability, the commitment maybe, behind the agreement.
Yeah, what does that tell you? When almost as soon as the ink is dry, you're getting reports of violations, or at least potential ones.
Well, it just underscores the deep, deep mistrust, doesn't it? And how incredibly volatile the situation is. Even something that might be a misunderstanding or a localized incident could potentially escalate things again very quickly.
It feels like walking on eggshells.
It really does. But, it's also really important to hear from the people actually living there.
Absolutely.
We saw a quote from Bilal Shabir. He's an IT consultant in Muzaffarabad, that's in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. He called the ceasefire a positive step.
Okay.
And he emphasized, in war, it's not just soldiers who die, it's mostly civilians. And in this case, it would have been the people of Kashmir. His perspective really grounds it, I think.
It does. Brings home the human element. And what about from the Indian side?
We heard from Sukesh Kanjuria, a resident in Srinagar. He welcomed the ceasefire, yes, but he also expressed the strong skepticism. He basically said trusting Pakistan is, quote, difficult, and stressed that they have to stay vigilant. Caution, deep caution. These are people who've lived with this conflict for decades, you know? Their wariness speaks volumes about the challenges that are still there.
Definitely. And internationally.
Yeah.
We saw the U.S. taking a front seat with the announcement, but what about others?
Yeah, the international reaction has been pretty significant. Both the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance, they commented on their involvement.
Right.
Rubio even mentioned possible future talks, maybe at a neutral site. That level of direct U.S. engagement is, well, it's noteworthy. It suggests they see a real risk of wider destabilization here.
It does. What kind of leverage do you think the U.S. actually has in this kind of situation, given that history of mistrust?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Beyond the U.S., though, we also heard from the U.K. Foreign Secretary David Lammy welcomed the ceasefire, urged them to keep it going.
Standard diplomatic response, but important.
Yes. And the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he called it a positive step, hoping for lasting peace. Even Iran's foreign ministry chimed in, calling for this chance to be used for de-escalation. So, a broad consensus, really. Everyone wants this to hold.
Okay, so diplomats are talking peace. But meanwhile, on the military front, we've had this sort of barrage of claims and counterclaims, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. And as always in these situations, verifying any of it independently is incredibly difficult.
Right, like Pakistan claiming they shot down, was it 77 Israeli-made drones?
That was the number they put out, yes. And AFP did report actually seeing some debris, for what that's worth.
What's the strategic thinking there, claiming such a high number?
It's hard to say definitively. Projecting defensive strength, perhaps, undermining the opponent's tech advantage. Could be several things.
And India, meanwhile, countered, claiming they destroyed hundreds of Pakistani drones, identifying many as Turkish-made.
Exactly. So you get these competing narratives, each side trying to show their military was more effective, inflicted more damage.
It becomes information warfare alongside the actual fighting.
Precisely. And it didn't stop with drones. Pakistan also claimed they'd shot down 5 Indian warplanes, including 3 of their advanced Rafale jets, the French ones.
Which is a big claim. Has New Delhi confirmed any losses like that?
Not that we've seen. No confirmation from New Delhi on losing any aircraft. So again, claim and counterclaim.
It just makes getting a clear picture incredibly challenging for anyone trying to follow this.
It really does.
And maybe for anyone just tuning in, it's worth stressing again. This recent flare-up, intense as it was, it's happening against a much, much longer backdrop.
Oh, absolutely. The conflict over Kashmir, it's been the defining issue between India and Pakistan basically since 1947, since independence from Britain.
But both countries claiming the whole territory, but each controlling parts of it. Why has it remained such a persistent flashpoint for so long? Can you give us the sort of nutshell version?
Well, in a nutshell, it's incredibly complex, but at its core, you have competing claims to sovereignty right from the partition of British India. The ruler of Kashmir at the time, a Hindu Maharaja ruling a mostly Muslim population, initially hesitated, then acceded to India. Pakistan contested that accession immediately. That led to the First War.
And there have been several since.
Several wars, countless skirmishes, ongoing political tension. It's fueled by nationalism, strategic calculations, water resources, and of course, the competing aspirations of the Kashmiri people themselves. It's a deeply layered conflict.
And things have arguably gotten more tense recently, especially since 2019.
Yes, definitely. India's decision in 2019 to revoke the special status, the limited autonomy of Indian-administered Kashmir. That was a huge move. It significantly changed the political situation on the ground and has been a major source of friction ever since. We've seen increased militant activity reported since then, too.
So this latest fighting, these past few days, you really have to see it in light of that history and those more recent developments.
Precisely. These events never happen in a vacuum. They're all deeply interconnected and rooted in that complex past.
Okay, so pulling it all together then, we've got this sudden, maybe U.S.-brokered ceasefire, which is, on the surface, good news.
Definitely welcome news.
But almost immediately, we get claims of violations. which just highlights how incredibly fragile the whole thing is. Feels much more like a pause than any kind of resolution, doesn't it?
That feels like a very accurate description. Yes, a pause. The immediate halt to fighting is crucial, obviously, but none of the underlying issues, the core problems, have been addressed.
No.
And we heard that mix of relief and deep skepticism from the civilians caught in the middle. Their experiences just hammer home how urgently a real, lasting peace is needed, not just a temporary truce.
And the international community is clearly invested, watching closely, with the U.S. playing this very prominent role, trying to keep things from escalating further.
It's a collective holding of breath, almost, recognizing the potential for this to spill over if it's not managed carefully.
Right. So maybe the final thought to leave listeners with is this. Given everything we've discussed, the long history, the deep mistrust, these immediate reports of the ceasefire already being shaky, what does it actually take? What fundamental shifts need to happen to break this cycle, to move beyond just temporary ceasefires towards something genuinely sustainable in the region?
And perhaps adding to that, what does this incredibly quick claim of a violation tell us about the immediate chances for that kind of lasting peace? It's a sobering reminder, isn't it, that silencing the guns is only the very first, very small step. Achieving real peace is, well, that's a much harder road.